So chaps, I'm sure you're all aware that I love Europa Universalis 4. In fact, this is my favourite Paradox interactive game to play. I've many happy moments in this game, and yet I recently noticed that I've never actually signed to my Paradox account and published my score to the online scoreboard. This got me thinking, just who is the best player at EU4? Now there is a problem here, because for a start, there is no real accurate way of measuring who is definitively the best player at EU4, so I will only be demonstrating the top players from several categories. Let us start with the most basic, top players by score. So these are all players who have played an Iron Man mode game with their Paradox account linked to them. The problem with this is it's impossible to know what version of the game this was achieved in. Because of these problems, many of these scores were cheated or were made using countries that have been changed or no longer exist. For our first player, who has achieved the score of 108,433 in EU4, we certainly have to ask if he cheated. For a start, the player after him achieved a mere 50,265 as Ryuku. Now these first three top scores are all held by people that have cheated. The first player's save file is apparently currently on the date 7th of January 2161, and the country is playing is simply an error message, so well done to Deadly Hunter for having the highest score even if he did cheat. Similarly, Arawan and Temolgin, the second and third player, have also cheated and played until 2036 and 1944. This exploit was common, and I first encountered it when trying to find a way to complete the infamous Norwegian Wood achievement, so hats off for them for doing it, but oh well, their scores don't really count. So if not these three, who does actually have the rank as greatest EU4 player by score? Well, it actually goes to someone called Minivine, who achieved a score of 28,702 whilst playing as France. Looking at his other scores, this appears to be the only recorded campaign that he has ever finished. Now, whilst this is good, I do not think that we should ignore the others. Well, allow me to present to you Kali, a player who has achieved the score of 26,463 as Byzantium. He did not even finish the game and stopped 5 years before the end date. In terms of rankings, Kali is only the 5th best player in the world, however with this achievement, I believe that by score, he is the best player. Next up is a category that might not really mean they are the best player, however I think it is important to give a mention to those who have the most amount of time played in Europa Universalis 4. Now this already raises a few problems. Just how are you meant to calculate who has the most hours? Steam does not exactly show this information off. So I had to do a search of the Steam and Reddit groups for EU4, and eventually I found something. Johanna Drott, a Reddit user, published 2 years ago that he had 5,620 hours in game. So I did a quick search and I found him on Steam, and 2 years later he is now at 8,748 hours played of EU4. In fact, whilst I was writing this script he was playing EU4, so hats off to him for dedication. However, as I am sure all of the Paradox developers in the audience will be saying, what about our Q&A department? It does seem actually rather difficult to calculate the amount of time the QA department has in game. It really is an impossible task, as DA9L explained to me recently, because some of the QA team play on a different Steam account and also play using the Europa Universalis beta testing version. Because of this, it is almost impossible to say. I've personally noticed that Grugi has been playing the beta version for almost all the time I've been online on Steam recently. He only ever seems to actually play the public version when he loans out money in the developer games. However, I am able to make the firm guess that DDR Jake has the most amount of hours in EU4. DDR Jake appears to have the most hours of EU4 on his public Steam account out of all of the other developers, at 4,277. Considering the work Jake does for Paradox, it is impossible to accurately say what the real number might be. However, it is very likely that it is well over 10,000 hours. Jake, feel free to correct me in the comment section if I'm wrong, and of course DA9L, if you're watching, I know you've probably also spent a similar amount of time in game. Well done, hats off to you for all your work. So who else might be the best player? What about the YouTubers? Now I don't mean the channels like my own, because no matter how much I try, I will never be able to compare to some of the greats. Most notably, I would say that Floriworry could quite possibly be the most skilled YouTuber at EU4. The only problem here is that whilst Flory is a bloody good player, he is effectively the greatest cheater and exploiter the game has ever seen. In a similar fashion, Marco Antonio is another very good EU4 player. The very small YouTuber 8twix, with only 200 subscribers at the moment, has a whole host of campaigns of him completing achievements on very hard difficulties without exploits. However, I would say that overall Arumba might be the best EU4 YouTuber in terms of min-maxing skills without cheats. Because of the sheer amount of campaigns he has played in both single player and multiplayer, his love of analytical spreadsheets is just borderline fanatical. He quite simply is in a league of his own. When he really puts his mind to it, he can get the most out of every situation he finds himself in. Of course, I have not encountered every EU4 YouTuber out there, so if you know someone who you think is superior to Arumba, then feel free to explain your reasoning in the comments section. Anyway, on to the final category, and the only category that actually has a definitive ranking system, the Paradox Developer Clash multiplayer games. For those that have been living under a rock, allow me to explain. The Dev Clash is the closest thing EU4 has to an esports tournament. It even has a set of charming Scottish commentators to keep the game exciting. So far there have been 8 developer clashes, although some went by a different name. Overall, the award for most trophies go to Johan. However, in the latest dev clash he played an empire that was crushed and continued to perform badly. Starnan is another popular player because whilst he was also knocked out of the latest dev clash, he was effectively killed in the most spectacular fashion possible. Starnan later returned to bash up some other countries as effectively a rentable DLC. During this time he showed immense coordination and skill, leading his alliance to a wonderful victory. Now, it is important not to put down Johan, because whilst he did leave early on, his nation, which was left as an Aquitanian puppet, was able to accumulate more score than Grugi, a player-controlled bank account. So yeah, quite the achievement, Johan, well done. Anyway, overall, after watching all of the previous 4 developer games, I would say that Starnan and Johan are certainly the 2 best players consistently. Starnan is an expert at coordination and player wars, however Johan is superior when it comes to an economic and longer lasting game. Hence why he does always seem to end up with the #1 trophies. Now, this is just my own opinion, so I decided to contact one of my favourite developers, Katz, to shed some light on the situation. The question I actually asked him was, which of the Paradox developers do you believe is the best at EU4? When it comes to MP, he said that Wiz is a mastermind of MP. Grugi and Fido are also great at finding unconventional ways to play. Starnan is pretty much unrivaled when it comes to the microcontrol. When it comes to just overall, I would probably say that Jake is a very strong contender. We have a lot of very good players at the office, so it's by no means easy to answer the overall side of things. Anyway, that has been my video about who is the best player of EU4. Of course, there is no definitive ranking system available and no esports championships just yet. However, I hope that this video has made you at least think about hosting your own EU4 multiplayer championships to showcase your skills with your friends. Anyway, if you enjoyed this video, found it informative, feel free to give it a like. It effectively buys me a cup of tea. I think that's how the economy works at the moment. Anyway, see you all in the next one.